Welcome back, crafters, to another episode of Foamsmithing with me, Mark, at Wolf and Raven Arts. In this episode, we're going to do something a little different before we get back into primary foamsmithing. Something that I've been wanting to do as far as accent pieces and things that can really make your pieces, your armor pieces, really stand out, as well as a few other things. But anyway, enough talking. Let me get right into it. I want to create this rose out of foam. I'm going to use the 2mm foam, and I'm going to try to do my best to get it as accurate to this as possible. Of course, there's other kinds of roses out there. It doesn't have to necessarily be this one. I may try bigger ones, but this is sort of a challenge to myself. And if this goes well, there's quite a few different projects that I want to use this stuff for. So let's see if we can do this. My general strategy right now is to work from the inside of the rose out with my piece. So cutting out foam pieces. I don't know if you can really tell on camera, but you have that swirl on the inside and it's layered up. So I want to try to start from the inside, maybe take one or two pieces of foam, layer them together like this in a twist, real tight, and I'm going to super glue them together. I'm only going to use super glue for this, and work my way out. I'm going to have to get a little creative with flaring out the pieces. I got my heat gun ready, so I think what I'm going to do is as I cut the pieces, I'm going to use the heat gun to shape them out a little bit, get them to stretch and flare, and then keep sticking them on towards like the bottom here and things like that until we get a nice bulb going on. And yeah, and then these outside pieces I'm not too worried about, because then from this specific example you can really see there's this one and then this one and then this couple of inside ones. So really maybe able to get away with only doing 4 individual pieces of the 2mm foam on the outside. All in all, I don't think this is going to be a very difficult thing. I think the most difficult part actually will just be kind of the bottom here. Not going to try to recreate it exactly. Because if I'm going to be doing a bouquet that goes around a hilt or something like that, I'm less worried about what's underneath as compared to the actual rose itself. But we're going to see what happens. So let's get to it. See if I can do this maybe in 5-10 minutes. Make a nice short video and give you all another tool in your arsenal of foamcraft. Okay, cool. Let's do this. So the first thing that we got is obviously our rose for reference and our 2mm foam. And first thing I did was kind of compare the height of the rose to the height that I wanted to get. I wanted to get it pretty close. I think I ran it off around 2¼ inches here just to give myself a good margin of error. And I cut that out by 1 inch wide to essentially create a core at first. And what we're going to do with that is build the rest of the rose around it. Of course, took my heat gun, got it heated up real nice and good, so that way I could roll it up and glue it onto itself, and then we could create the basis of our rose. I used super glue here. It was very effective. You only need a few little dabs here and there to get the gluing going, and you want to just be careful of it not sticking to your fingers too much. It may take a little bit to get exactly a good tight core that you want, but once you have it, the rest seems pretty easy. Afterwards, I cut out another piece of 2¼ by 1 inch on the 2mm foam to create a buffer area towards the bottom of the core to sort of create the bell shape of the rose with all the subsequent pieces we would make on the outside. I then proceeded to glue that to the core itself and wrap it around. And there you have it. So that's going to be the basis of our shape, and all the subsequent pieces of the petals, like here, are going to form around it. At this point, I was planning on cutting out the actual petal shapes, so I had to separate one of the petals from the rose. I cut out a piece of it in the bottom to get it to lay flat, so that way I could use it as a template on the 2mm foam. I was having a hard time sticking it onto the foam, so I used the 10mm foam underneath and actually pinned the pedal to it so that way it wouldn't go anywhere. And then I proceeded to cut around it so that way my template was as near perfect to the rose petal as I could get it. So it's worth noting that while you're cutting on top of the 10mm foam, your cuts aren't going to go all the way through because it's not a hard surface behind it. So once you're done unpinning, you're going to want to go back and retrace over it. If you have a sharper blade or you have a better way of doing it, of course go that way, but that's just how I did it. At this point I had one piece that I was using as a master template for the subsequent pieces I was going to cut out. On the safe side, I decided I was going to cut out around 8 pieces total. I thought I was only going to use 6. Wound up using all of them, but it's always good to make more and not need them than have to go back. Once all your pieces are cut, of course you're going to go with your heat gun and shape them all. The heat's going to go all the way through them because they're only 2mm thick, and once they're heated, you're going to try to shape them as much in the shape of the petals as you can. Because it's 2mm foam, it kind of stretches, which is a good thing, and you can really press in a lot of pressure to get the bell shape and get the edges flared towards the top. At this point, I was ready to glue my first petal onto the interior core. I was really trying to get it as tight as I could, so I started by gluing down the center of the petal and put that on first. Still trying to maintain a little bit of the petal's natural shape along the way. Of course, being that this is on the inside, you're not going to worry too much about how it looks. It's going to be the last petals on the outside that you got to worry about. My main focus here was just to get the shape of the bulb established. And after putting the first 3 or 4 layers on, it slowly started to take shape. Just keep adding pieces on until the shape really starts to take form. As you get to the final 2 or 3 layers, it's worth noting that you're not going to want to hug the petals directly onto the rest of the bulb. You're only going to want to find maybe 2 or 3 spots to give it a nice opening flower shape to it. So I compared it with the reference flower and saw that I still had that bit of a core sticking out of it. So I got my scissors and just cut that right off. And it left me with a pretty good comparison right there next to the real rose. So I was pretty happy with that. Next, I busted out the heat gun to add subtle details to the edges of the petals, just to give it a more natural and distressed look. I worked on the outside, just giving light heat to it, and I worked my way on the edges, tried to add some of the subtle vein and line work, as well as going to the inside of the petals to also give it a more distressed look. After that, I proceeded to cut out the small leaves around the base of the rose. I cut out about 6 or 7 of these to start sticking on the bottom and start working on my actual stem. So after heating them up and getting them bent slightly outward, I was ready to glue them to the base of the actual rose itself, and just to make sure I was covering up any of the divots that I created while making the petals. After all my leaves were on, I actually wanted to cover them with another foam piece. It was about 1 inch wide, so I cut one out and just stuck it to the bottom to hide any other inconsistencies with the rose. So after securing the bottom in place, I was pretty satisfied with my product. The only thing I did after this was bend the leaves inward to mimic the shape of the rose even more. After that was said and done, I was ready for paint. And I had set aside 3 paints, a red, a dark green, as well as a black wash to get out the subtle details later on. So I started with my red, just thinning it out on my paper towel before putting it to the foam itself. And I just got to work pretty much covering all the exposed area of the petals that I wanted to turn red. I didn't really focus too heavily towards the bottom or any other darker areas, as I wanted to convey some depth with the entire piece. Of course, the next step was to add green to the leaves on the bottom. Just making sure I was covering everything that might be seen. And then finally I added black wash for the cracks in between and any of the recessed areas, so that way even more depth was conveyed. Alrighty folks, there you have it. This has just been coated with the black wash after adding just a few layers of the red and the green. Yeah, I'm basically going to call it after this. But yeah, so this just gives you a basic idea of another little thing you can do for your foam crafts. Like I said, I'm going to try to do a bunch of these. I'm going to go bigger too. I'm going to try and make it a little wider and a little bit more flat, so that way I can do like a whole bouquet. But yeah, anyway, so there you go. Another nice little tool to add to your arsenal. As always, like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're seeing this on Facebook, like the video, share it around, all that stuff. Seems like I've got quite a bit of support, and I like it, and I'm very appreciative of everyone who supported me. Big shout out to James and Ann, who got me the new tripod that I am shooting this video with. It is super handy, giving me a nice downward angle, so I can be a little bit more instructive than the regular tripod, so I'm very happy with that. But yeah, so, you know, keep at it, keep crafting. I think the next video we're going to go back to Gorilla Foamsmithing with the greaves, because I kind of want to get on that. And from there, I hope to actually do full build, you know, details, paint and everything. And yeah, we'll take it from there. So thanks for watching. Take care out there.